The Voyages of Christopher Columbus. Early life and ambitions. Christopher Columbus, born Cristoforo Colombo around 1451 in Genoa, Italy, was the son of a wool weaver and cheese merchant. Genoa, a bustling maritime city, exposed Columbus to the sea and sparked his interest in exploration. As a young man, Columbus gained valuable seafaring experience working on commercial trading ships, navigating the Mediterranean Sea. His early voyages took him to various destinations, including England, Ireland, and possibly Iceland, where he encountered stories of lands to the west beyond the Atlantic Ocean. The quest for support. By the mid-1480s, Columbus had become convinced of the feasibility of reaching Asia by sailing westward. At that time, Europe was seeking alternative trade routes to the East Indies, modern-day Southeast Asia, due to the Ottoman Turks' control of traditional land routes. Columbus believed that a westward route would be shorter and more direct. However, his proposal to find a westward route to Asia faced skepticism. He sought support from several European monarchs, including King John II of Portugal, who rejected his proposal, deeming the distance too great and the success unlikely. Undeterred, Columbus turned to the Spanish monarchs, King Ferdinand II of Aragon and Queen Isabella I of Castile. After initial hesitation and lobbying by influential supporters such as Luis de Santangel and the friars of La Rabida, the Spanish monarchs eventually agreed to finance Columbus's expedition. They saw potential for expanding their empire, spreading Christianity and acquiring wealth through new trade routes. The first voyage, 1492-1493. In August 1492, Columbus set sail from the Spanish port of Palos de la Frontera with 3 ships, the Santa María, the Pinta, and the Niña. His crew consisted of approximately 90 men. After a brief stop in the Canary Islands to make final preparations, they embarked on the transatlantic journey on September 6, 1492. For over a month, Columbus and his crew navigated the uncharted waters of the Atlantic Ocean, encountering challenges such as unpredictable weather, dwindling supplies, and growing uncertainty among the crew. Despite the crew's growing apprehension, Columbus remained steadfast, assuring them of imminent landfall. Discovery of the New World. On October 12, 1492, after 36 days at sea, land was finally sighted. The lookout aboard the Pinta, Rodrigo de Triana, spotted an island in what is now the Bahamas. Columbus named the island San Salvador, meaning Holy Savior. Believing he had reached islands off the coast of Asia, Columbus referred to the indigenous people he encountered as Indians. Columbus and his crew explored several islands in the Caribbean, including present-day Cuba and Hispaniola. He established a settlement called La Navidad on Hispaniola, using the remains of the Santa Maria which had run aground on Christmas Day. The indigenous Taino people they encountered were friendly and curious, and Columbus noted their hospitality and the potential for converting them to Christianity. After spending several months exploring the region and gathering valuable information about the new lands, Columbus set sail for Spain in January 1493, leaving a small contingent behind in La Navidad. He arrived back in Spain in March 1493, bringing with him exotic goods, a few indigenous people, and news of his discovery. The second voyage, 1493-1496. Buoyed by the success of his first voyage, Columbus quickly organized a second expedition, this time with a larger fleet of 17 ships and about 1,200 men, including settlers, soldiers, and missionaries. The goal of this voyage was to establish permanent colonies and further explore the newly discovered lands. The fleet departed from Cadiz in September 1493 and arrived in the Caribbean in November. Columbus found La Navidad in ruins, with the settlers he had left behind either dead or missing, likely due to conflicts with the indigenous population. Undeterred, he established a new settlement called Isabella on the northern coast of Hispaniola. Columbus continued his explorations, discovering several more islands, including Puerto Rico and Jamaica. However, the realities of establishing and managing colonies soon became apparent. The settlers faced challenges such as disease, food shortages, and conflicts with the indigenous people. Columbus struggled to maintain order and manage the expectations of both the settlers and the Spanish crown. The third voyage, 1498-1500. Despite the difficulties encountered during the second voyage, Columbus embarked on a third expedition in May 1498. This time his fleet consisted of 6 ships, and his mission was to explore further south and find a passage to Asia. Columbus reached the northern coast of South America, specifically present-day Venezuela, marking the first time he set foot on the mainland of the New World. He explored the Orinoco River and realized that he had encountered a vast landmass, which he described as a new continent. However, he still believed it was part of Asia. Returning to Hispaniola, Columbus found the colony in disarray. The settlers were unhappy and conflicts with the indigenous population had escalated. Reports of Columbus's harsh governance and the colony's difficulties reached the Spanish court, leading to growing dissatisfaction with his leadership. The fourth voyage, 1502-1504. Despite his waning favor at the Spanish court, Columbus was granted permission to undertake a fourth and final voyage in 1502. The goal of this expedition was to find a westward passage to Asia and continue exploring the Central American coast. Columbus set sail with 4 ships and about 150 men. He explored the coasts of Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica and Panama, facing numerous challenges, including hostile weather, treacherous waters, and resistance from the indigenous people. During this voyage, Columbus and his crew endured a severe hurricane and were forced to take refuge on the coast of Jamaica, where they were stranded for over a year due to damaged ships and lack of supplies. Return and final years. After being rescued and returning to Spain in 1504, Columbus found himself out of favor at the Spanish court. His patron, Queen Isabella, had died, and King Ferdinand was more interested in consolidating Spanish control over the New World than in supporting further explorations. Columbus spent his final years in relative obscurity, living in Valladolid, Spain. He died on May 20, 1506, still believing that he had discovered a new route to Asia. His remains were initially interred in Valladolid, then moved to Seville and later transferred to the Cathedral of Santa María la Menor in Santo Domingo, Hispaniola. After various relocations, some of his remains are now housed in the Seville Cathedral in Spain. The legacy of Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus's voyages marked the beginning of a new era in world history. His expeditions led to the widespread awareness of the American continents and initiated a period of European exploration, conquest and colonization. Columbus's discoveries had profound and far-reaching effects on both the Old World and the New World. Columbian exchange. One of the most significant impacts of Columbus's voyages was the Columbian exchange, the widespread transfer of plants, animals, culture, human populations, technology, and ideas between the Americas and the Old World. This exchange transformed economies, diets, and ways of life across the globe. Agricultural impact. The introduction of crops such as potatoes, tomatoes, maize, corn, and tobacco from the Americas to Europe and Asia revolutionized agriculture and diets. Conversely, Old World crops like wheat, rice, sugarcane, and coffee were introduced to the New World, transforming the agricultural landscape. Animal exchange. The introduction of livestock such as horses, cattle, pigs, and sheep to the Americas had a profound impact on indigenous societies. Horses, in particular, revolutionized transportation, warfare, and hunting for many Native American cultures. Disease exchange. The exchange also included the transfer of diseases. European settlers brought diseases such as smallpox, measles, and influenza to the Americas, which decimated indigenous populations who had no immunity to these new illnesses. This catastrophic impact reshaped demographics and societies in the New World. Cultural impact. The Columbian exchange also facilitated the blending of cultures, leading to the creation of new cultural identities and practices. The interaction between Europeans, Native Americans, and Africans, due to the transatlantic slave trade, resulted in a complex tapestry of cultural influences, controversy, and criticism. While Columbus is often celebrated for his voyages and their impact on world history, his legacy is also a subject of significant controversy and criticism. His arrival in the Americas marked the beginning of a period of conquest, colonization, and exploitation that had devastating effects on indigenous populations. Treatment of indigenous peoples. Columbus's expeditions and subsequent Spanish colonization efforts were marked by brutality and exploitation of indigenous peoples. Columbus himself instituted policies that led to the enslavement, forced labor, and harsh treatment of Native Americans. These actions have been widely condemned and have led to a re-evaluation of his legacy. Historical reassessment. Modern historians and scholars have critically reassessed Columbus's contributions and actions. While acknowledging his role in opening the Americas to European exploration, they also highlight the negative consequences of his voyages, including the disruption of indigenous societies and the initiation of the transatlantic slave trade. Columbus Day debate. In the United States, Columbus Day has been a federal holiday since 1937, celebrating Columbus's arrival in the Americas. However, in recent years, there has been a growing movement to replace Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day to honor the histories and cultures of Native American communities and recognize the suffering caused by European colonization. 4.0